Nicole Martin. I'm the Chief Empowerment Officer of HR Boost. HR Boost is thrilled to sponsor this third in the series of building trust for effective leadership. This is a topic that has been written about and published in my book, The Talent Emergency, and Dr. Ray's book, It's My Company Too, and Stephen Valek's book, Character, right? The character children's book that we love giving to leaders to break it down and keep it real, Character-Based Car Company. So if you're with us today and you haven't read any of our published works, just know this is going to be a nice download and replay available to all of you on the things that all three of us are passionate about. Right, Ray?
Got it.
Got it. All right. So 2 articles appeared in September and October back in 2020, the edition of the Harvard Business Review. If you're someone like me, you like reading those white papers, but if you missed it, it should have sent shockwaves through the business world, but we know 2020 was a big distraction. And we didn't even hear a whimper about it. But one article noted that the labor, quote unquote, labor is treated as a commodity, and the goal is to cut it to a minimum by replacing employees with contractors, gig workers, and software. And this is something I also speak about right now, with the freelance market being about 50% of the talent pool, 57 million in the US, even before COVID. The second article called for a new model of ethical leadership to create more values for society. As Drucker, you all have heard about him, read about him, you know, Peter Drucker. As Drucker noted long ago, businesses exist to serve society. But the article noted, and I quote, executives will unconsciously overlook serious wrongdoing in their company if it benefits them or their organization. I'm sure you all can trigger a memory of that, right? The person who's the toxic employee up at leadership, but they're the sales executive, or they're the sacred cow, as they're sometimes called. So that quote, unconsciously overlook it. Because why? It benefits the bottom line. But in contrast, both articles missed a key point, which is how these actions destroy trust. And what? It destroys trust with and between stakeholders. And I've been saying and preaching for years, trust is broken. Trust is broken in leadership right now. And the most important of whom are company employees, those who are either motivated and excited about their work, who are, disheartened by examples before them in these large organizations or mid-sized companies that are just shaken and even destroyed that trust within the organizations. And many of them are jumping ship, going to that freelance market, as we talked about already. But today's presentation and discussion examines trust and what leaders can do. All of you are leaders who are joining us today, just so you know, we see you that way, leadership at all levels, right, Ray?
Absolutely.
That's right. You're all leaders if you're here with me today. So just know, it's up to us. We can build and strengthen trust. We can strengthen trust for a competitive advantage. And our premise is that trust is the foundation, that rock hard concrete on which effective leadership and by extension, organizational performance is built. All right, so recall Drucker's word, every organization is perfectly designed to achieve the results it gets. Our presentation today addresses how to design and build that trust for your company culture to achieve the best results for collective efforts. And our expectation today is that you all have decades of experience. I know some of you, and I work side by side with some of you, and we're thrilled you're here. And we're praying you take it forward and outward, which is why we expanded to 90 minutes today, so we can have more dialogue, a little more interaction, and we'll be opening up mics throughout the presentation today, and you have the opportunity to talk with each other because we learned through that shared experience for sure. But know that it will be recorded and replayed and reshared. So just know that if you don't want to be on camera, that's okay. You can still talk and mic up. And if you're okay, you want to be on camera, then we'll help you live forever online and sharing your thought leadership. But we will open up those mics. So as before, we ask you to pause. Maybe you were very busy this morning. It was crunch time, taking back-to-back meetings, running kids to school. Who knows? But we want you to pause, take a deep breath. Just sit in your chair if you're sitting, feel that. Breathe, take a deep breath, and just let it go. So you're present with us, mind, body, spirit. Open your heart, take a couple deep breaths, and open your minds. Open your minds to the substance of the presentation today, the authentic leadership of Dr. Ray, who's going to take it forward. And take it inward with a personal examination. Maybe have a notepad nearby with your aha moments as we get going, the things that mean something to you in a memory or something you're applying it to as you learn it, or refresh it if you already know it. And with that, I'm going to hand you over to the one and the only Dr. Ray Benedetto. Ray, take it forward. I will take myself off camera so that I'm not distracting, but I'll be here all the while.
Okay, thanks, Nicole. So I want to say thank you, and again, welcome back to so many of you who attended our last two webinars, and welcome to the new folks who've joined us today and found us and are interested in learning about building trust for effective leadership. Before we get started, just like we've done before, we have some housekeeping items to address. First, please ensure your audio connection is set in the mute mode so we can ensure the recording eliminates any outside noises. Second, we have 7 polling questions interspersed within the session to which you'll be asked to respond. So please do so as quickly as possible so we can share aggregate results with all participants. Third, you'll see we have a chat room featured at the bottom of the screen. Please post any questions you have along the way in the chat room, and we'll strive to address these as we're going along in the presentation. You'll also see a hand at the bottom of the screen that you can click to ask a question. Please keep your hand raised until we acknowledge you, at which point we will unmute your microphone so you can have a short dialogue. The session is being recorded, as Nicole noted, so it's available on the HR Boost website in the future. And finally, we'll ask you for your aha moments at the end of this webinar. So please keep this thought in mind as we work through the material we're about to discuss. Given this guidance, let's return to the framework for success we used in the last two webinars. Continue to find the roles and focus of today's presentation, which is the architect's role in creating the right culture. However, this time we're going deeper into the culture and how to get everyone from new and existing talent to those who are already in it and leading the organization, how we get them aligned to learn, build, model, and reinforce a culture of trust throughout the company. Okay, and recall that the foundation of innovation begins with trust and caring that we show when we build within our relationships, both internal and external to the company. Collaboration and innovation will not occur if employees do not perceive and feel trust and caring within their companies. Okay, so recall also that we discussed how the entrepreneurial spirit, which is underpinned by risk-taking and innovation, must permeate a company's culture to achieve the objective of doing what is right for all stakeholders. We also introduced the concept and principles of character-based capitalism, which combines the entrepreneurial spirit of capitalism with character in the form of company values such as trust and caring that employees continue to practice in their relationships. Character-based capitalism, again, is about making more money by doing what is right for all stakeholders. And we also introduced the idea that webs of trust are built every day through the various interactions where we demonstrate our reliability in delivering on promises and commitments. Again, trust and care. And so we also revealed how character-based capitalism fosters enlightened self-interest to develop long-term, high-trust, win-win relationships. The company competes then with ideas for solutions that enable it to jump to new business life cycles and achieve performance excellence, which stands in stark contrast as the selfish interests of owners or stockholders that focus only on the transactions for more deals and competing on price, which results in lower margins that lead to shorter business life cycles and eventual decline of the business. And so our objectives today are here, beginning with the definition of trust. And then we're going to look at the leadership styles that either build it or destroy it. And we're then going to look at 5 keys for building and maintaining a culture of trust within your company, and then how trust can be achieved through character-based capitalism. So why is building trust so important now than ever before? Nicole already gave you some examples, but let's look a little deeper. Mercer just recently did a study on the global talent trends. There's an urgency to act, okay? Because nearly all HR leaders in the study noted that more work needs to be done in building trusting cultures, which stands in stark contrast to less than a third of company executives actually seeing the ROI of building a healthy, resilient culture to support an equitable future of work. Okay, let's take this one step further. The urgency extends to the nature of work, which is and will continue to change, as reflected in the belief among 3/4 of workers that remote or hybrid work leads to more successful companies. Again, in stark contrast, nearly 3/4 of executives, just the opposite almost, in the study have yet to understand the impact of remote work on their culture and company performance. This data is also consistent with what we presented previously, that well less than a third of executives understand their company's culture and why it's important. This is a critical point, and obviously this adds to the sense of urgency. Because company culture has a direct impact on creating thriving employees, note that nearly 80% of the surveyed employees are more likely to work for a company they trust, regardless of the work that has to be done, especially if they perceive their company prepares them for the future of work, and if the culture supports their desire to make a mid-career change. Again, we talk about that whole idea of the talent pipeline. This is a matter of how we bring people on and really make them part of the process through which we drive the company forward. They're not just widgets. They're not commodities. They are part of our culture, and we need to recognize and appreciation for that. The urgency to act is best reflected in the latest data that shows many employers are focusing on the extrinsic view of motivation by offering higher salaries and in some cases shorter work weeks. But what matters most to employees is the intrinsic view. We're talking about things like being trusted, having the respect of everyone with whom they work, having a well-defined organizational purpose with which they can align their energies, and being surrounded by a supportive community of exceptional and competent leaders and coworkers. Is this too much to ask? We don't think so. And the rest of this presentation will show how you can achieve these desires. Our first objective focuses on the top need of trust and the role of servant leadership. So we're going to open the polls for our first question. Okay, how important is trust in company leaders for achieving performance excellence? Again, the scale is 1 to 5, 1 being not very important, 5 being very important. And your response to this question will reflect your perspectives based on your experience. Please raise your hand also if you have ever lost trust in a leader because of a decision of an action they made. First, let's get to the polls.
Right. So we've got about 70% who've weighed in already, Ray.
Okay.
I see Dr. Cheryl Nova's raising her hand. She knows it. Thank you, Dr. Cheryl. All right. So we're getting a little closer. Just a few more of you need to vote. Weigh in on that poll. All right.
Okay.
Let's reveal the results. No surprises. There you go.
Okay. Well, obviously you're all here, and it's important, obviously, that we have to continue on. So, based on the hand count, let's go back to Cheryl. You pointed out, how many of you have ever felt so strongly about losing trust that you actually left a position and moved on? Can we see a hand count on that?
Dr. Cheryl, right away. I know I have, Ray. Yeah. And Karen has.
Okay.
Thank you, Karen.
And so we have some really heavy personal experiences from which we can
Dr.
talk
Ed
about
too, Ray. Dr. Ed weighed in. He can recall that as well.
Right. Okay. So let me see if I can get my screen to move along here. There we go. Okay. So, our first and most important role of leadership is building trust. And so a concise definition of trust is shown here. We must believe in another's intentions, competence, commitment, and actions to do the right thing if we are going to place our confidence in them and trust them with whatever we share with them, whether that is our knowledge or our energies in various forms of work. I think we would all agree with that. Thus, who a leader is, and as we'll soon see, directly shapes how trust is built. The first and most important role, as we said, is building trust. So building trust begins with the 4 core competencies of an effective leader, which are character, emotional intelligence, business knowledge, and critical thinking. And today's focus is going to be on character and emotional intelligence for building trust. So think about this. Character is the first competence. Why is this of critical importance? Because there are 2 sides to character. The first is performance character, which is about doing the best job possible. Performance character is inwardly focused with personal qualities such as diligence, initiative, integrity, work ethic, and responsibility. Moral character is the other side, which is about being the best person one can be toward others, and it's outwardly focused, and it's seen in qualities such as respect, caring, fairness, trustworthiness, and citizenship. So remember the 2 sides of character. This is critically important because when people talk about character, they don't think about the 2 sides. but the two sides are definitely there. You'll see how this relates then as we're going through to the two sides of the brain and to emotional intelligence and how we act as leaders. So here's your first thought question. What would company performance look like if everyone within it consciously exercised performance character, which is doing the best job they could possibly do day in and day out? This thought question, of course, is intended for you to contemplate and discuss with others after we complete the session. But it's a critical component because many times we don't think about, are we doing the best possible job that we can do? And by the way, how are we helping others do the best possible job that they can do? So let's turn to the second competence of emotional intelligence and see how EQ and character are connected. Emotional intelligence is highly correlated with leadership success. It's been proven in the literature, according to and in practice. According to Dan Goleman, emotional intelligence is the capability of an individual to recognize emotions in themselves and others, as well as to how to use this information to guide thinking and behavior. At its lowest level, emotional intelligence is about self-awareness, which includes emotional self-awareness, accurate self-assessment, and self-confidence. The second level of self-management is also inwardly focused, with an emphasis on the traits that you see listed here. Note that our individual attention and actions to be trustworthy in executing our responsibilities is essential for self-management. We begin to earn trust by being trustworthy and fulfilling what is asked of us. If we can't be trustworthy, then who's going to trust us, right? And so trustworthiness is a critical component that we have to recognize as being within the self, within that intrapersonal confidence. The third level of EQ, social awareness, shifts to an external focus with empathy toward others, service orientation, and especially organizational, or you might say situational awareness. Okay. Another word for empathy here is also caring. And we're going to keep coming back to that, empathy and caring and trust. Okay. And relationship management is the highest level of EQ and addresses practices shown on this list. Notice the daily practice of communication, building bonds, teamwork, and collaboration is essential. The daily practice of these four components is essential for building trust with others. Remember that as we continue to move on. So let's go back, okay? Again, looking at this global talent trend study, emotional intelligence is a critical factor in employee retention because today's employees want to thrive, not merely survive. And data tells us they are more likely to work for you if you balance both EQ and IQ in your decisions. It cannot be ignored. EQ has been elevated now to a critical component of individual performance and company performance. EQ also operates on both sides of the brain. Self-awareness and self-management, as we said before, are intrapersonal left brain competences that involve analytical processes and rational thinking. Whereas social awareness and relationship management are right brain activities that rely on interpersonal competences for nurturing ideas and relationships. Emotional intelligence character are also directly related. Self-awareness and self-management help to strengthen one's performance character, namely the commitment to doing the best job possible, while moral character underpins social awareness and relationship management, which are essential in being the best person one can be toward others. You cannot separate the two. Okay? Does that make sense? So given this knowledge, here's your next thought question. What would your company performance look like if everyone demonstrated moral character through self-awareness and relationship management? We'd like to open the mics here for a short discussion. So please raise your hand if you'd like to engage. What's been your experience in challenging others to be the best they can be by engaging their moral character, and what were the results?
I've opened up the mics for everyone to just jump in. I think it'd just be better, Ray.
Huh? I'm sorry?
I think it would just be better.
Yeah. Well, you see, the thing is that many times you don't think about character. But what we found in high-performing organizations, because character is a critical component of their culture, okay? They think about it not just in the hiring, but day in, day out, okay? And how can we make everyone better? And the key is, and I'll tell you some stories in a couple of minutes of how this has been shown time in and time out in the high-performing companies with which we've worked. Okay, so if we don't have any other comments, no hands raised there to engage. Let's
Nobody's
continue.
feeling talkative like us today, Ray. They're watching you though. They're listening.
That's okay. That's okay.
One word.
So when we think about this, Let me see if I can get again this moving. I've got this screen down the bottom here showing me all sorts of things, and I can't get rid of it. Okay.
It's like when you get the pop-ups, all those things.
Yeah, right. Okay. Okay. So EQ plays a critical role in how we view organizational leadership. Because now what we see here is the traditional top-down view of leadership, which places executive leaders at the top and people closest to the customer or operations at the bottom. However, we have found that character-based cultures exemplify servant leadership, which turns the traditional organizational hierarchy upside down on its head, with those closest to the customer being supported by all other leader levels. This structure is known as the service model of leadership. Servant leaders are not motivated by personal gain or position. Rather, they feel responsible and care for everyone above them, namely their operational leaders, their frontline leaders, their stakeholders, okay? They feel responsible and care for all these stakeholders, especially those on the front line who are delivering value day in, day out to the external parties they serve. Okay, so now an employee comes with a need for something or has a problem, a servant leader first listens to gain an accurate understanding of the employee's view of the situation. This is really critically important to listen and understand. And then if the need is about a barrier that impedes that individual's progress, the servant leader needs to help that employee either obtain the resources and information necessary to remove the obstacles or facilitates access to others in the company who can help solve the problem. So in this case, the servant leader is a facilitator and not necessarily a guide. A servant leader supports others by also asking critical questions rather than telling someone what to do. Coaching is a critical practice of servant leaders, which means letting the employee lead the discussion while providing advice rather than issuing orders. Employees will experience setbacks or even failures when trying something new. Rather than finding fault or pointing blame, servant leaders coach and guide others to learn from what's happened so they can do better the next time. A servant leader wants to improve the ability of employees to recover quickly from mistakes to make things right. But the key here is this is a matter of continual learning. Servant leadership is an important part of building an innovative culture because it builds trust that drives out fear of failure. You know, if you're not trying stuff new, if you're not trying new things, if you're not experimenting, then how are you going to innovate and move ahead? So by inspiring and encouraging others with whom they work, servant leaders enable others to see how their work makes a difference and is meaningful, not only to themselves, but also to those they serve. And then we think about encouraging employees also means challenging the status quo and questioning assumptions behind the current way of doing things. How many times have you heard, oh, we've always done it this way? But that doesn't work in today's environment, and it doesn't work in any high-performing organization. And they notice that challenging, the status quo is one of the 5 practices of highly effective leaders. So empowering others to act is another trait of exemplary servant leaders. Supporting employees builds self-esteem and confidence to take the initiative in finding more ways to make things better. And knowing that if you come up with an idea and it falls short, you're not going to be castrated for it. You're not going to be ostracized for it, but you're actually going to be supported because you took the initiative. You have the courage to move forward. And how are you going to continue to do that day in and day out? That's what a servant leader essentially does. And servant leaders are also humble leaders who give credit to others for their successes while taking the blame when things go poorly. Servant leaders know that organizational success is a result of many hands working in concert for the greater good, not merely a few, and their primary role is to create the right culture and conditions through which everyone can be successful. We talked about creating the right culture last time. This obviously is continuation. Now we're looking at what are the specific leadership traits that need to be employed in order to make that culture come alive. So with a service model, employees at all levels can be servant leaders. So let's turn to our next polling question. Which of the 7 servant leader practices require my greatest attention over the next 90 days? And you give multiple answers here. So go to it, please.
There you go.
Is everyone weighed in?
Nope, I just opened it up.
Okay.
We got some voting going on now. Everybody let us know how you feel, and we'll publish the results in a minute.
I have to apologize. I'm still a little stuffed up.
There's so many things going around, right, Ray?
Yeah. we're on the tail end of this thing. I'm done.
I think everybody is. And it's not just colds. It's like everything. It's because we were all closed off for so long and then we started mingling again. And next thing you know.
And of course, the seasonal allergies don't help.
Right. I get those too. Okay. We're at about 60% right now. Still looking for a few more of you to weigh in. It's really looking diversified in the response. This is interesting data. We're at about 85% participation right now.
Okay.
I'll give it another minute. All right, let's take a look. Go ahead and speak to the results, Ray, because the poll doesn't show in the recording. And so later, people
Okay.
who want to see the data, that's the advantage of being here, I guess. But
So notice that listening and understanding is the highest at 83%. Inspiring and encouraging is the second at 67%. And then we have removing obstacles, coaching, and empowering others to act at 50%. Okay. And, there again, all these practices work together. So you think about listening and understanding. If you're listening and understanding, what's that going to lead to? Okay. For one thing, you're going to empower others to act if you listen and understand more frequently. Because the other thing is that in listening and understanding, the critical part here is asking the critical questions. When someone comes to you with an issue, are you ready to solve the problem, or you are going to give it back to them? I like to listen and understand to see what they know. And then the challenging question is, well, what do you think? Okay. Or what are you seeing here? Or what are the obstacles that you perceive to be in the way of moving this issue ahead? How would you address this? Okay. So now we talk about beginning that dialogue, and you'll see in a minute that this whole process, that's the democratic and coaching styles put together. And you'll see how these 7 practices are then built into the leadership styles that we're going to be getting into in a couple minutes. Okay. Okay. Any comments or questions about that? There really aren't any surprises here, but I did want to say one thing. The coaching style, or the practices didn't appear to be as strong as the others. Okay. It's at 50%. And I would challenge you that everyone here should strive to really build that practice, build that behavior. Because the more frequently you're seen as a coach, the more readily people will come to you, because you're not going to give them the answers, but you're going to help them become better at what they're doing. Okay. The goal here is become a coach. Go ahead.
And Ray, Cheryl commented just now, she posed a question. So how do we implement this in an oligarchy?
Good point. Good question, Cheryl. So to that point, a lot of businesses are oligarchies, okay? And that's where many times I've had to step back and say, okay, even from my own experience, I realized that I could not change the entire organization. So now the question is, what is the area that I have immediate control over, or immediately over supervision over, that I can affect change in? Sometimes you can start to affect a change inside a department or a section of your company, and that can have a spillover effect. I can tell you this much, that when I was in an academic medical center many years ago, my job was to change the culture within our department, which was pervasive. It went pretty much throughout the entire organization. And it was in the practices then that I was expecting of my leaders, that they then practiced as servant leaders elsewhere, that had an impact upon other departments. You may not, if you're not in the senior C-suite position to make this change culturally for the entire organization, you can at least strive to change it within your own domain. Okay. And then the other question is, if you're not being successful, how long can you survive in that organization knowing what you know? Okay. And then you said
that, Ray, I can think back where I have worked for dysfunctional leaders as I was coming up through the field in HR specifically. And if you report to CEOs, there's always pockets of dysfunction in organizations. And I felt most definitely, Ray, when I think about it, it's been where we create our own mission for our department and values for our department then. And what's really powerful about this in terms of your suggestion is that right now, the 50% of the talent pool is millennial, and they aren't loyal to organizations, period. They're loyal to people. And if you are a person who is a leader and you build this around you, and let's say you jump ship, guess who's going to follow you? The talent.
Yeah, and the thing is that, and there's an excellent point about oligarchies and dysfunctional leadership. In fact, the funny thing is that when we were first talking about this webinar, the first working topic was effective versus dysfunctional leadership. And we decided, no, there's enough dysfunction out there. Let's talk about the positive things that you can be doing to be the most effective leader that you can be inside the context of where you're operating. But again, back to Nicole's point, there are a lot of organizations that have toxic cultures. And what I have learned from my own experience is that unless you are in the C-suite where you can actually change that culture, then you may find yourself looking for other employment so that you can be your true authentic self. Because there only comes a point in time when you can only hit your head up against the wall so many times and you say, this is insanity, because we know what the mark of insanity, right? Okay. And as Nicole said, we can only lead from where we stand. And that's a critical point. Okay, so let's continue on, and let's talk about the leadership styles. Pardon me, that build trust, and then we'll also go look at the styles that also destroy trust. Okay, so recall from previous webinar that achieving performance excellence is a journey through several stages that are bounded by three critical vectors: leadership, organizational learning and knowledge, and execution. And commitment to performance excellence also means creating and protecting an organizational culture that continually strengthens character-based capitalism. The first vector of leadership includes two critical capabilities, the first of which is transformational leadership. So let's look at that for a couple of minutes, okay? Transformational leadership engages a broad, long-term perspective that encourages change, innovation, and growth. Transformational leaders also constantly clarify and champion the company's vision and the company's plan to achieve it. They inspire employees to place the company's success ahead of personal agendas. They delegate execution, but stay involved to guide progress. And they advise and motivate employees to be creative and innovative in solving problems. When employees need help, they ask questions rather than give answers to allow employees to discover the solutions in their own way. This is critically important, because you want leaders not necessarily copying you, but emulating your practices and the way in which you approach people and build relationships. You don't want to have a whole bunch of yes men or yes women behind you. What you want to have are critical thinkers who can really recognize these are the behaviors I need to be practicing in this particular situation. We also find that employees at all levels can be transformational leaders by interacting with people from other departments and learning about the business beyond their own functions. It's a matter now of organizational awareness versus their own particular domain. Okay, they can also motivate others to exchange ideas and collaborate for innovation solutions that are going to be better because of so many being involved in the process, and then being able to execute this in their individual departments or teams. So, pardon me, transformational leaders take personal risks, and they use unconventional methods to achieve breakthroughs for advancing toward the vision. The bottom line is that unlike transactional leaders who focus only on getting results, transformational leaders develop relationships with all stakeholders, employees, customers, suppliers, and investors, through which they build a trust. Constant communication, feedback, coordination, and collaboration. Remember before I talked about the 4 C's. They lead to greater success because all stakeholders contribute to it. So let's turn to our next polling question. How confident are you in discussing efforts to cultivate servant leadership with other leaders within your company? Are you confident, moderately confident, uncertain, or you need some help?
Ooh, I'm liking these answers. This is good. We're about 66% participation right now, so we'll just give it a couple more minutes. Ooh, 83%. There we go.
Okay.
All right, let's take a look here. Sharing the results.
That's great. Fantastic. Okay. But now let's talk about the uncertainty. Where's the uncertainty lie? Okay, only one responded with being uncertain, but I'm really concerned about this because we're almost speaking to the choir here in these sessions. Those of you who have signed up understand that leadership is critical. We have to have changes in leadership. That the urgency exists to bring this about. How do we reach others? And so those who are very confident, I'm curious as to how do you perceive others within your company? Obviously, open to communication, I sense. Okay, open to this discussion. Those of you who are uncertain, what leads that trepidation about moving forward? Any comments? Any chat on that?
I'm not seeing anything just yet here, Ray, but something came to mind, and maybe I'll share since I'm just an open book anyways. I can think of a situation though, when I was in and working for somebody that treated me differently than an entire group of men that I worked with. And it was because of a personal relationship that we had in terms of I was brought in by his family to take over HR. But when I look back at this, it was a pivotal moment that I learned something, Ray, which was I was always PC, respectful, filtered, maybe, right? In leadership, being professional. And so there was a day where I thought it drew the line and I got emotional for a peer person that was being yelled at next to me. And in that situation, I decided to fight for that person and let it be known that this was not acceptable. And I got so emotional though, as a woman in business at the time, that I actually teared up a little bit. And I remember going home that night feeling anxiety, like, wow, I really drew the line there. And wow, I'm going to lose my job and all of that. Boy, did I break professionalism, all of that. Typical emotional woman even, right? So then I look back, but the next day, guess what happened to me?
Okay.
I was working for a man who got that stress going in his, basically the hippocampus, the cortisol release where you can't access short-term memory the first 5 minutes after that stress. Right. And so I came back the next day, I got promoted.
Okay.
And I learned we need to stop tiptoeing. Anybody of you that feel uncertain, you're tiptoeing, guess what? Your talent, you have the upper hand right now. If you have something to say, all that matters is truth. Say it respectfully, truth.
Nicole, to your point. Now, let's talk about servant leadership for a second. Let's go back to challenging the process. The 5 practices of exemplary leadership are: number 1, model the way, inspire shared vision, challenge the process. If you're not challenging the process, okay, then somebody is dead at the switch. And if you cannot, for one thing, if you cannot be your authentic self, where you can share that emotion. Let's talk about emotional intelligence. It's one thing to be emotional, but it's another thing to act with emotional intelligence, which is talking about empathy, caring. And you were demonstrating empathy toward that coworker at that time.
Yes.
Okay, that is necessary for building trust. You built more trust with that coworker in that instance of standing up for him than you could ever have imagined, because that came out of the blue. He may or may not have expected that, but by coming up and stepping up to the plate, you proved it. You proved your worth in that situation. And furthermore, your boss recognized that he overstepped his bounds. Okay?
Right. We as leaders need to help each other that way.
Right, exactly. And that's like a critical point. We talk about leaders at all levels, strategic, operational, and grassroots. We're here together to work together. Okay. And I can tell you from some of my past experiences, when we established a new operation within the Department of Defense, we just broke all the rules. In fact, one of the rules was, typical military, you think, oh, well, we have to address people by rank. When we opened up our operation, one of the rules, ground rules was first names only. When we're in our cocoon working as a team, we cannot have this false, I shouldn't say false, but we shouldn't have this structure around us that's preventing us from moving forward.
Oh, I love that.
So we create our own rules of engagement in that environment. And not only that, but just because you were in a particular rank didn't mean that you took the lead. We had a lot of captains and majors taking leads on major initiatives across a region that folks say, well, how do they deserve to do that? Because they're very good and they're effective leaders. That's why they get to do that. Okay.
Oh.
And it has nothing to do with their rank. It has to do with their competence. It has to do with their confidence. It has to do with their character. And that's why we talk about character, emotional intelligence, critical thinking, and business knowledge in that order in terms of the core competencies.
And there we have it.
And there we have it. Okay, let's continue to move on. Okay, so so as we noted earlier, the second core competence of an effective leader is emotional intelligence, and the second critical capability of a transformational servant leader is building emotionally intelligent leadership. So let's move into that. Your challenge as a transformational servant leader is choosing applying one or more of 4 positive leadership styles that have proven to be effective in most situations. So let's examine each of these briefly. The authoritative style works best in mobilizing and directing people toward a clear vision. Employees see how their work connects to the vision and why what they do is important. We call this line of sight. This style increases employee commitment to the organization's mission, strategy, and goals. And this style emphasizes self-confidence, empathy, and being a change catalyst. Sorry, my finger there got a little anxious. The affiliative style values people and is sensitive to their emotions. Going back to your example a second ago, Nicole, this style creates harmony. It also helps to heal rifts in teams, or it motivates people during times of stress. It builds emotional bonds and helps people feel a sense of belonging. This style emphasizes self-confidence, empathy, and communication. And Nicole, thank you again for your example, because it's a perfect example of this style. The democratic style forges consensus through participation and works best for building buy-in or to getting ideas from your employees. Giving employees a say in the decision process increases trust, respect, and commitment. The democratic leader also boosts morale by listening to employees and responding to their needs by emphasizing communication, collaboration, and team leadership. And then the coaching style works hand in hand with the democratic style, because the objective here is developing people to be the best of their potential. The coaching style includes instruction, feedback, challenging questions, and reinforcement of best practices learned along the way, while also helping employees improve their performance, develop their strengths, and seek more opportunities for long-term growth. This style emphasizes empathy, self-awareness, and a strong commitment to developing others. Practicing these 4, okay, I'm sorry, I got a glitch there. There we go. Practicing these 4 emotionally intelligent leadership styles builds trust over time as workers' knowledge and confidence in their abilities increase, which leads to better performance and associated gains and benefits. The democratic styles and the coaching styles are the dynamic duo of styles because they continue to build and perpetuate trust by engaging both of these. I also want to point out that you will continue to use all 4 of these styles, but to different degrees as your team matures and demonstrates more self-leadership. You'll also still use the authoritative style at times as you either redirect the mission or bring in new people who need to be acclimated to your culture. But the other styles become more evident in leaders at all levels as they reinforce the positive styles that they have become accustomed to practicing themselves. Okay, so while we're talking about positive styles, we cannot ignore the fact that 2 negative styles exist and must be dealt with. And you know, Cheryl, going back to your point about an oligarchy, unfortunately, many times we see these 2 styles in an oligarchy, and that's why if you're striving to be emotionally intelligent and in your leadership style, you may find that you're going to be at odds with these styles. The coercive style is one to be avoided because it demands, let me go back. It demands immediate compliance without consideration of employees' thoughts, feelings, or efforts. Think of this as the finger in the chest approach to leadership. You must have experienced it somewhere in your career. A key expression of this one is, it's my way or the highway. Okay. This style is only effective in a crisis, to kickstart a turnaround, or with problem employees. Using it on an ongoing basis definitely generates fear, kills ideas, and destroys morale. It causes people to only tell the leader what they think he wants to hear rather than what he needs to know. And then the other negative style is pace setting. This style might be used to get quick results from a highly motivated and competent team, but employees can become quickly overwhelmed and discouraged by the pace setter's demands. especially when the leader fails to provide adequate direction and feedback, which can also lead to frustration and burnout. We've seen this so many times in organizations that are striving to be the best, but they don't know how. And Wells Fargo was a perfect example where retail bankers aggressively pushed to get 8 new products per customer, which caused many bankers to open fake accounts with disastrous results, as we know, in the bank's reputation, employee morale, and financial penalties. So let's go to our 4th polling question. Given these descriptions, which EQ leadership styles do you presently employ more frequently? You can answer more than once here.
Okay, so it's open. I love this polling question because it just gives you time to think about yourself as the leader that we see you as already.
Right.
We're 66% participated.
There are no right or wrong answers here. I mean, that's the neat thing about this.
Well, and being able to choose that you're not always in one area, like you said, we could be maybe predominant in 2 areas.
Well, I think, again, we talked about the 4 styles: authoritative, affiliative, democratic, and coaching, the 4 positive styles. I think any effective leader is going to be utilizing these 4, like I said, in different degrees, depending upon the situation at the time. Okay. Coaching, outstanding. Democratic, excellent. Now, I want you to think about this. Democratic and coaching. Those who didn't put 100% for coaching, but not 100% for democratic, think about that, if you would, please. Because the democratic is about asking questions and seeking buy-in and getting ideas, and coaching is about asking questions. And so those where you're not equal, you need to up the game there and ask a lot of questions, more questions when you're doing the coaching approach. Okay. Also, affiliative. I want you to think about culture. Let's go back to the last session. If you didn't attend the last session, please go back and review that on the HR Boost website, because building a culture of innovation and growth really also means creating harmony inside that organization. So I want you to go back and look at the affiliative style. I didn't mention it before, but there's an outstanding article in Harvard Business Review. It was from the year 2000 by Daniel Goldman. It's titled "Leadership That Gets Results." I suggest you go back and look at that and read that as well, because it discusses these 6 styles in detail and how you can employ the top 4, and as we say here, the authoritative, affiliative, democratic, and coaching. And obviously, it's coercive. You may need to do that sometimes. It's not preferred, but again, it's short-lived and it's for specific situations. So are there any other comments there? Is there any chat on that? Anyone have any questions about this? And again,
any hands up or anything? Anybody want to have a exchange on this topic?
And Nicole,
Shelley does. Shelley
Okay.
Goldstein. Shelley, I'm going to allow you to talk.
Shelley,
How
go
are
ahead.
things in LA today, darling?
Yes, sunny, beautiful LA. Lovely to be here. This is such an important discussion, and I think today more than ever, with work from home and hybrid environments, this is just so critical. Leaders really need to connect at every level, and we need to inspire leaders within our teams. My question is, when it comes to all these different leadership styles, what are some of us doing to compensate or improve if we have more than one leadership style, especially when it's a potentially contrasting leadership style?
Okay, Shelley, I think you and I had a conversation about something called the Johari window. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to put this out there for everyone. It's capital J, small o, capital HARI. Okay, it's nothing magical about this. It's the name for the 2 psychologists who developed this back in the 1960s, Joseph Ingram and Harrington Luft. And it's to this day, I still use it, because the Johari window is a matter of we come to relationships one-on-one. Okay, we cannot, if we have a third person in the room, we have a conversation, but that's not building a relationship. Relationships are built one-on-one. And so therefore, when you are approaching an individual, you have to be looking at that individual and where they are coming from. Okay, and then you have to adapt your style to where they are at that moment in time. Now, the other thing is that we talked about the two different levels. There's the organizational level and the individual level. But when you look at the individual level, you know, especially the affiliative, the democratic, and the coaching styles are your primary styles you need to engage, because that's where that's building that relationship. You're building trust with that other person. The authoritative style is more of an organizational style to provide direction and give and guide the entire team toward a specific direction. Okay. The authoritative style is not necessarily very good on one-to-one. Okay. Because a person, if you're very directive, they may perceive that you're telling them what to do rather than engaging their own brain. Okay. And so I encourage you to look at all these styles, because the key here for an effective transformational servant leader is you have to be highly adaptive. You have to recognize where you are. That's where the emotional intelligence comes into play. Okay, because now you have to understand not just where you are, but also where that individual is, and then what style do you need to engage to get the most effective result from this interaction. And many times that's in the democratic style, that's in the coaching style, where you're encouraging them, you're challenging them, you're causing them to think, you're causing them to use critical thinking. Okay, so now we're engaging character, emotional intelligence, and critical thinking to help them build their business knowledge. Again, does that make sense?
It makes complete sense, but I don't know that every person, every leader has that ability or may not have that ability or capacity. I mean, if it was so easy to adjust to meet the level of the person before you, I don't think we would have challenges in business.
Actually, Shelley, to your point, that's exactly why we are here. Okay, exactly why we are here, because the majority of leaders today are very poor at what they do. Mm-hmm. They don't know how to lead. And why is that? Think about this. Why has the Gallup data not changed significantly in the past 20 years? 70% of employees are not engaged in their companies. Why not? It's a fact of leadership. It's poor leadership. It's people who are in positions of leadership who are not leading. They're managing. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that goes right back to that one of the articles that Nicole mentioned before. You know, the HR business has overmanaged human performance because there's this misperception that management and leadership are the same thing. No, they're not. They're two distinct disciplines. And as we've said here, leadership is about the right brain and about guiding people and developing people and focusing on their strengths to help build them up and not telling them what they have to do. Okay. And so there again, we'll come back to that in a couple of minutes when I get down to closer to the tail end of the presentation. Okay. But does that make sense?
Yes.
I went ahead. She said that she agreed. Thanks, Shelley. And I just put out there the quote that I think I even posted online the other day, which is, we never manage people. People do as they choose. We have the opportunity to manage processes. And that is the biggest misnomer out there.
Right. And so, you know, the 6 possible styles, you have 4 from which to choose to have positive effects on employee performance. While 2 take the Al Capone approach. Again, that oligarchy, that dysfunctional leadership, you know, you get more, Al Capone say you get more with a kind word and a gun than with a kind word alone. Well, that doesn't work in today's environment. We know that. Mastering the 4 positive emotional leadership styles, those important for achieving performance excellence. Okay, so here's your next thought question. What behaviors should you expect to see from employees where leaders consistently employ the 4 positive EQ leadership styles? What do you think? Chat question or open mics?
Go for it, guys. Maybe we can just get chat going really quick.
What behaviors can we expect to see?
I think the first one is people speaking up, and sometimes people speak up and then they're shut down right away.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I have some great stories, and it's my company too, about, you know, especially from Tasty Catering when that happened. And, you know, actually, real quick story, 2 up-and-comers within that company, Tim Walter and Jamie Pritchard, who were in their 20s at the time. They came forward to Tom Walter at one point and said, unless you change your style, we are out of here. They were the future of the company. And Tom had to step back, and he did a real, you know, honest to God, look at himself, and he said, I've got to change. My brothers have got to change. We cannot go on like this. And so if you want to have exceptional behaviors in terms of how your people are working with the people that they serve, you've got to first model that. And that begins with these leadership styles.
Yeah, and Sandy had something to say, Ray, and Katie.
Sandy, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Sandy?
Oh, no, the behavior, well, I was just putting in the chat, you said, what behaviors would you expect to see? I think that it rolls downhill. If you're coaching consistently your employees, they're going to coach each other for better results.
That's exactly right. Yeah, put it this way, it's what they learn and what they catch in the process. If they see you doing these positive things, they're going to do the same thing.
And Katie also had something to offer as well. Katie?
I was going to say that if I actually had a leader that did all 4 of these, I think I would be more prone to voice my opinion or my concerns, because I know that they would be taken effectively and then taught as to why perhaps they wouldn't work or they would work. And then I would feel more, I guess I don't know what the word I want to say is, more open to just being at work and doing a better job, because I know that we're all in this together, and then I'm going to have that consistent feedback and that positive approach to the suggestions or whatnot that I have.
Absolutely. And the other thing about this, though, in today's environment, this is becoming more difficult because we're more removed. And so having connection visually, even through Zoom, is important. In fact, I had this conversation the other day with a colleague, and that they're having a problem because of the separation, the physical separation now. And I said, well, how many times are you connecting? They go to talk about where are the physical connections taking place. We used to talk about leadership by walking around in LBWA, walking on the shop floor and just, having these sometimes impromptu conversations with staff on the floor, instead of having everything so formal. There again, that goes right back to this whole issue of democratic style, asking critical questions, being inquisitive, being curious. Okay. It goes right back to our own behaviors and our emotional intelligence. You make an excellent point.
Well, and I think too, Ray, in the virtual world, I have found, like, even in my own business here at HR Boost, we do leadership success exchanges. And I meet with everyone that works for me, for example, at a minimum once a year, where we go in just asking, what can I do for you? How can I help you? And then even facilitating that coaching conversation. And I have a number of boosters that are wonderful coaches, even Sandy, and she'll even coach up to me, so then I get that reciprocity. And whenever you hear somebody kind of giving you that constructive feedback, I always try to hear it and then always acknowledge it with a thank you.
Right.
So that it's accepted, I've embraced it, and you've helped me. Thank you.
I think that goes right back, Nicole, to the point also that if you are an effective leader, you're also a lifelong learner. And lifelong learning is not necessarily from the books. It's a matter from, it's the day-to-day stuff we learn from each other. And that's a critical point. And then, so again, let's go back to this. What behaviors should you expect to see from employees? That they are sponges, they are learners. And that's what happens when you employ these 4 styles, because they get into that practice as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on, because I'm looking at time here. We have exactly 30 minutes left, and so we still have a lot to get to. So returning to the framework for success, recall the architect's role in creating the culture of trust through which everyone within the company feels comfortable and safe, as we just mentioned, as you mentioned, sharing their ideas, making errors from which they can learn and grow, and explore new opportunities for innovation, change, and growth. So our responsibility is building that culture. So, all elements of a company's human resource system need to reflect and integrate and embed performance expectations of transformational leadership and emotional intelligence leadership to ensure consistent application across all of these aspects of HR. So let's turn to another polling question. Based on what you now know about EQ leadership styles, which will you develop to be more effective? And you can answer more than one here.
All right, got some people weighing in. It changed our perspective slightly. And they can only choose one, Ray?
No, you can move multiple choice here.
Yes, so we have to remember the
Select
tip
more than
we
one.
got earlier about coaching and democratic approaches and how they're kind of going together with that asking and then coaching. We're at 100%. Let's see. Here we go.
Fantastic. Great. We've seen movement to the right. Excellent. That's what we hope to see. Okay. So let's remember that we are all on a journey. Okay. And our journey ends the day we die. So let's just remember that becoming an effective leader is a constant thing. So basically, as we noted earlier, building trust is the first and most important role of leadership, but trust is based on perceptions, okay, and one's own assessment of what they see in character, commitment, and intent. So now it's a matter of what people are seeing versus what they're hearing. You know, the intent is exemplified within the organizational culture, which is either strengthened or weakened by how we do our work. In our last seminar, we noted that teamwork and collaboration are necessary to drive creativity and innovation. Creativity and innovation cannot be achieved without having trust. So let's turn to the 5 keys for building and maintaining trust within your company. The first key is shared core values. Building trust begins with a focus on respect, trust, and ethical conduct. Explicitly shared values define the structure with which employees serve one another as well as external customers. And core values and practice also differentiate and create distinctive cultures that constantly build trust, attract and sustain long-term relationships, and result in sustainable success. So I'm going to very quickly give you some examples. Tasty Catering. When Tasty Catering changed from fast food restaurants to catering, Tom Walter, who was the CEO at the time, knew that a transformation was needed in employee knowledge, abilities, skills, and habits. And after reading Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, Tom realized the company's family style values were not well-defined, specific enough, or employee generated. So what did he do? The first step with the company's transformation had to do with core values and using employee teams to form an entirely new set of core values, the first 2 of which you see here. Always do others moral, ethical, legal, and treat others with respect. I'm going to come back to number 2 in a second. The values, though, emerge from the hearts and the minds of many rather than being driven from the top down, and everyone holds everyone else accountable to living those values. A perfect example is this one. One of my favorite stories of a frontline employee, living the values of character-based cultures about Hugo Rios tell us. Hugo came to the U.S. from Mexico after his parents were murdered by the cartel. He started as a dishwasher at age 15, not knowing any English. Over 7 years, he worked his way up to warehouseman, which is where my story picks up. From his ladder in the warehouse, he heard a team leader being rude and disrespectful in correcting an action by a team member. Hugo got down from his ladder, went over to the supervisor, pointed to the company values that were posted on the wall, and simply said, "Numero dos," indicating the supervisor has violated value number 2, which is treat others with respect, right? The supervisor had to make immediate amends or lose his job because of violating a core value. Tom Walter, the CEO, who was elsewhere in the warehouse, observed the exchange and approached Hugo, offering him a $20 bill as a thank you. Hugo handed the bill back and said, "Tomas, it's my company too." And that's how we got to this title of our book. Okay. How many frontline workers do you have that live your culture like Hugo? Okay. So let's look at the next one. The second key is hiring and strengthening character. Living core values goes back to the people we hire and the importance of personal character within the hiring process. Character represents how people put their personal values into action. So hiring people with the right character means selecting candidates whose personal values align closest with organizational core values. If your core values aren't defined, how are you going to get the right people aligned? Although technical competence can be used to screen candidates, high-performing companies want the best employees who will fit the culture. So in the last 2 webinars, we addressed the 3 C's of hiring used by high performers, beginning with character, then commitment, then competence. Remember, we hire for character and we train for skill. So an example of this key is the Tarleton Corporation, which seeks potential hires who have the correct technical qualifications and the temperaments to handle the numerous and very personal interactions, again, relationships required when dealing with clients, subcontractors, and partners. For most Tarleton jobs, a second battery of interviewers looks at the ability of candidates to work with people, not just at their technical competence, but can they solve problems? Can they negotiate when necessary to resolve issues? Hiring quality people is essential for their success. And to quote their CEO, if we do not have the best people in knowing the business and knowing how to work with people, we will not succeed in the market segment that we have defined. So think about that in terms of your own business, okay? How are you going to excel in the markets that you serve? By hiring character, Tarleton gains and develops project managers and staff who practice transformational leadership in navigating these behavioral dimensions of dealing with partners and subcontractors. They select project leaders on their ability to strengthen relationships as much as their technical competence. So when you look at job performance and you look at performance evaluations, where is that in the evaluation process? How do they develop relationships? How do your people develop relationships? And how are they being recognized and rewarded for that? Okay. That should be part of getting one of the jobs, getting the job done. The third key is fulfilling promises. In short, do what you say you will do. Trust stems from individuals doing the right thing, showing trustworthiness by taking responsibility for their actions and by being held accountable for outcomes. Building trust takes time because trust emerges from patterns of leadership that demonstrate good character while also insisting each member of the workforce follow suits. And this goes back to some of the questions that we talked about earlier, some of the dialogue we had earlier. It's a matter of how are we known and how are we continuing to do this? And so let's look at IPM. They fulfill their promises by shaping an ethical culture, which is framed by their vision or quest, which has 5 key components. To be a global market leader, they must have an impeccable reputation and be a catalyst for ethical conduct, which requires an exceptional employee training and development system. I can't go into it today, but I'll tell you what, we've got some great stories about IPM, how they have walked away from clients because clients failed to live by IPM standards, and IPM was not going to compromise our standards by simply doing business with them, okay? And that's how you become a market leader. To be a leader in growth and innovation, it's also an entrepreneurial spirit and innovative mindset must permeate the enterprise. And they do that in all 7 geographic locations where they now operate. To ensure prosperity for its employees, as well as the clients it serves, IPM must ensure stability and security of its assets, which lead to strength and financial rewards. But most importantly, they generate pride in the association with the brand. Clients love working with IPM because they know they have great people with which to work, but they also have peace of mind that they are going to achieve the objectives that they desire to accomplish. Professional fulfillment is achieved by having an extraordinary culture that provides challenging and rewarding career progression and personal satisfaction that lead to high levels of engagement and retention. Funny thing is about high-performing organizations, what we found, their retention rates are extremely high, well over 95%. And why is that? What do you think? Let's face it. We said before, people really prefer to work with lovable fools with whom they can easily associate and relate rather than competent jerks. And I'll tell you with this much, not one of these organizations has competent jerks.
I think, too, it really goes back to that character, Ray. I mean, when I met Tim Check, and just for those of you that are on, you can look up HR in the Fast Lane and Tim Check. I've had him on my HR in the Fast Lane show. I have an interview with him. He is the CFO essentially over the organization. And we had, back in the day before COVID, a speed event with it, which is how we learn culture in basically an hour with a bunch of leaders on the floor. We mix them up and they get to learn it experientially with us, right, Ray? And
yeah, absolutely.
Right, with Ted Gardnett, PS Culture Matters. So we were out at Medina Country Club, client of HR Boost back in the day, and we were in that room. Tim Check was in there, and I'm not going to spoil it for any of you who come to a future speed event with us, but Tim Check got up from his little tribe that we had put him off with when we sectioned them in groups, and he marched with passion across the room, and he stuck his finger in someone's face just like this, and he said, "I would never do business with you." And after that, I said, "You're coming on HR in the Fast, and I want to hear about this ethics." And he's a walking, talking ethical man, and it just goes to show how it comes back. They all have that character strong, and it was my honor, and they're recognized nationally for their ethics. It's incredible.
And let me also piggyback also internationally, Nicole, because they received the Better Business Bureau's International Award for Ethics. And they are again, the example. Chapter 2 of our book is very easy to read through and understand why they are exceptionally recognized for what they are.
They also have their service ideals versus their core values in the back of Talent Emergency. They shared that with us in the back of Talent Emergency as well. And so people who are understanding the difference between shared core values and service ideals, or the I voice versus we voice, we have that in the Talent Emergency, and this company is also there.
Right. I think that's really critically important that everyone who's listening, to be an effective leader, you'd have to be a lifelong learner. As we said before, you also have to be a lifelong reader. If you haven't read Nicole's books, please do so, and especially the Talent Emergency. And also, you'll see It's My Company too. You'll see the image up there. It's still available on Amazon. Okay, so let's move ahead. Also, talk about the quest also includes philanthropy at the corporate level and in all 7 locations, driven by the recognized needs of those communities, which support its commitment to be a good neighbor and a civic leader wherever employees operate. And we should all strive to do that. Their integrated Project Mercy initiatives throughout the country demonstrate the company's social responsibility and commitment to be a contributor to the betterment of society and the well-being of children. And so the 4th key is to show you care. Organizations are essential to the human experience. Leaders possess an awesome responsibility because organizations also shape the life and character of individuals in the most basic ways. Think about how many hours we have at work each day. So how do we understand and exercise trust with business transactions? That carries through our personal lives. Building trust requires continual demonstrations of how leaders care for others. Okay, so my first example is the North Lawndale Employment Network. They exist to improve the earning potential of North Lawndale residents and fight the poison of unemployment, which is the root cause of high crime within their community, which is on the west side of Chicago. 20 years ago, nearly 60% of adults in North Lawndale were involved in the criminal justice system. And the staff of NLEN have been working diligently ever since to convert ex-offenders into productive members of society. As one client stated, quote, "When you get out of a situation of long-term incarceration, you need someone to really listen to you, which NLEN counselors and staff do in the process of increasing the self-efficacy of those who use their services." The core qualities to NLEN's trust building are honesty and transparency. Trust is earned, quote, "by being open, honest, and relating to clients, which is the common denominator at NLEN at its business sweet beginnings." And that's another great story about beekeeping and all of that. NLEN programs fulfill their promise to help clients build a new life by believing in themselves and their self-dignity and self-worth, then believing in their ability and self-efficacy to build a new future for themselves by beginning anew. And so the 5th key to building trust is communicating your organizational purpose. Most leaders fail because they undercommunicate by a factor of 10. Success requires continually communicating the values, the vision, and mission of the organization, and being transparent in sharing organizational knowledge. Employees want to know where the company is headed and how they are part of something bigger than themselves, especially today. Again, Tasty Catering is a good example of leaders constantly communicating the organization's purpose through the data and knowledge shared within the company. To achieve better results, everyone must become invested in outcomes, and this investment begins with continual communication and reinforcement of purpose and values. Their weekly internal news report, Inside the Dish, shares performance metrics, financials, information about upcoming engagements, lessons learned from executing events, as well as their daily corporate deliveries. Okay, but the thing is that this transparency in operations extends to all teams within Tasty Catering. Each person decides what and how he or she is going to engage with others on the team to achieve their mutual goals. In addition, the team assigns and allocates additional responsibilities based on the availability and the varied capabilities and interests of each member. Although each member may employ performance character in focusing on their individual levels of responsibility or areas of responsibility, it's the whole team then that employs moral character in achieving performance goals. Each team has the freedom to do whatever is necessary to satisfy those goals and responsibilities, provided the acts, number one, they conform to core values, they operate within the guidelines of the culture in terms of ethics, and they deliver added value to the customer. No one tells the team what to do. They do it themselves because they are self-guided teams. And by living a character-based culture, Tasty Catering employees are empowered to act within the culture of discipline. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm having a little glitch here. Okay, Let me give you a quick example. By the time Julie Goosetree, who was a college senior, had risen to being a team level, she had spent 5 summers learning the ins and outs of Tasty's summer business of graduation, wedding, and corporate events. She had advanced to being a team leader who was ultimately responsible for the successful execution of assigned events. She fully understands Tasty's vision, mission, and goals, and she lived the core values. When she realized that numerous errors were occurring during an event that prevented her team from delivering Tasty's standard of excellence, she notified the host that he would not be charged for anything. The host did not believe that a 21-year-old could make such a decision and demanded to speak to her supervisor. When Julie got Larry Walter, the COO, on the line with the client, he reinforced the point that Julie was the company's eyes on the ears of the ground. She was the field general, and she had the authority to make whatever decision was necessary to make things right. Guess what? Tasty Catering obtained a client for life that evening. So how are your employees empowered to act like Julie? Thought question. What effects would more frequent communication of the company's values, vision, and mission have on building trust within your company and with your employees? I'm sorry that we're down to about 12, 13 minutes. So we're going to have to, I want to have some open mic communication here. If you would afterwards, if we want to have some dialogue, please send me an email, or we'll figure a way to communicate. But it's really important.
Put it in the chat, Ray. I'd love it if they just dropped in the chat. They can skim that while we continue.
Okay, that's great. Okay. So, our next polling question: of which of the 5 values will you focus to build trust during the next 90 days? Okay, here you have it.
This is great because this is making a commitment to ourselves and how we take it forward after this day, just sitting here learning this and how we put it into action.
It's not actionable. It's not going to work.
Right. Got about 83% participated.
And you, of course, you can answer more than once here.
Right. Because really all of them have to be employed.
Right.
All right, we got it. Here's the results.
Okay. Showing you care. Absolutely. Fantastic. Because that really is key. Okay. It goes right back to how we build relationships. And first and foremost, we build relationships, we build trust by caring for others. And so that's got to be paramount. And they're living core values. Okay. Excellent. So let's continue on and look at finally, how do we achieve trust through the pillars of character-based capitalism? The goal of character-based capitalism is making more money by doing what's right for all stakeholders. Have you just seen in the stories that we've shared with, from It's My Company to about companies like IPM, Tarleton, Tasty Catering, and LEN? They continually exercise character-based capitalism through the following design. They begin with the first pillar of shared core values to capture the hearts of employees and begin to align behaviors for consistent performance. Shared core values address principles such as accountability and responsibility. Even Deloitte Consulting, which is a huge international company, says that success begins with hiring the right types of individuals who share Deloitte's values, which simply reaffirms what our high-performing small to mid-sized companies have been doing for decades. We build trust internally by demonstrating performance and moral character through shared core values. The second pillar of leaders at all levels focuses on developing every single person, regardless of their position, to be capable of influencing actions and decisions within their purview. This applies equally, especially to frontline employees who are the closest to the operational processes. They face customers routinely, and they influence buying decisions through the relationships they build, as it does with strategic leaders who guide the company. Again, going back to Deloitte, a leader is shaped by how they build trust. And since who a leader is shapes how they build trust. And since trust is needed at all levels of an organization, we need to be building leaders at all levels as well. Third, is having a transcendent organizational purpose is crucial for fully engaging employees and making work more meaningful for everyone. We talked before about a line of sight. From when an individual walks through the door, they know exactly what they're doing today to achieve that vision. A company's purpose should include creating tangible impact for clients, as well as for the people and the communities in which we live and work. Go back to IPM, Integrated Project Mercy. You cannot separate the psychological and the emotional and the spiritual from an individual. Our purpose and values should be embedded in everything we do and need to be fully enculturated throughout our practices, which should include integrity and high ethical standards. Being right 100% of the time is not a goal because we are bound to make mistakes, especially if we're innovating, experimenting, and seeking the best solutions. Having a bigger purpose, however, than self helps move everyone in the right direction by building trust with stakeholders at all levels. And finally, the fourth pillar embeds a commitment to performance excellence that continuously improves capabilities along the three key vectors of leadership, knowledge, and execution. Now, this session obviously focused on leadership, but let's not shortchange knowledge and execution since they are equally important for performance excellence. With execution, teams must trust their leaders to perform better. And with knowledge, we must have clarity in terms of what needs to be accomplished, how, by, when, and with specific measures of impact. All three of these components require frequent and transparent communication as the foundation for effective collaboration in creating new ideas and solutions. The thing is that many companies do a good job of articulating things they're doing, but they fail to do a good job of sharing the why behind what they're doing and what they aren't doing. And this void can raise questions and concerns from various stakeholders, which can lead to distrust rather than the trust that is so essential for mobilizing support. So high-performing companies, again, such as IPM and others highlighted in It's My Company too, use an organizational leadership system such as character-based capitalism to align everyone on shared core values and organizational purpose, and then use leaders at all levels to model and reinforce the right culture, to advance through integration, and to reach the entangled stage where everyone is thinking and acting like an owner, which leads to the last polling question. Which of the four pillars of character-based capitalism does my company need to strengthen to address current challenges and improve performance? And you can answer more than once here.
Great, we're at about 50% participated. Let's give it another minute here. All right, here we go, Ray. I'm going to share the results.
Okay, fantastic. Yes, notice purpose and commitment to performance excellence. I can't say enough about this because when you notice their transcendent organizational purpose is missing so frequently because it's a matter of what's our mission, our vision, our values, and our strategic goals for the organization. And again, there's a lot of literature about this. We've written about it, obviously, constantly. But the fact that you recognize this, now the challenge is how are you going to work on it? Okay, so let's move to that question. Okay. Today, we addressed these objectives, okay? But we've only increased the surface here, but we hit the most critical points in addressing them today, okay? And we believe today's talent emergency has intensified the urgency to act on what employees want as well as what business leaders need, which is improving business performance, which is the key to which resides with hiring, motivating, inspiring, promoting, and retaining your best talent. We hit these points in our first webinar, but what really matters to employees is how we go about building trust, which we do through character, building respect through relationships, strengthening purpose through commitment, and connecting our community through company culture. The tapestry of our three webinars is a roadmap that can lead to success in your ongoing endeavors to build trust. Through the knowledge we've shared with you, we've made the case that action is needed now to change business and our world by making capitalism better for everyone. We've made the case that building trust and achieving higher organizational performance requires turning the old hierarchy on its head and practicing emotionally intelligent, transformational servant leadership. We have also shown how real-life companies have used the four pillars of character-based capitalism as an effective design to align their organization to pursue the path of performance excellence and break away from competitors. So the question is now, how can you put these ideas into action? We created the self-guided character-based capitalism program to help leaders like you learn and apply the practices of transformational servant leadership and align people with whom you work for performance excellence. While many leadership courses concentrate on individual leadership, the character-based capitalism program addresses both individual and organizational leadership. Let's face it, Leadership is tough enough without having to play a guessing game on how to move forward, which is why we designed the self-guided program to help everyday leaders who are in the trenches, as well as those who lead small to mid-sized companies. The program begins with 2 books. As mentioned before, Steve's book, The Story of the Character-Based Car Company, is an allegory that shows the basic principles of character-based capitalism and can be read in about an hour. It's My Company Too, which I'm co-author of, tells the real-life stories of high-performing companies and provides lessons learned to become a more effective organizational leader. Each of the 5 learning modules of the program uses an interactive workbook that guides participants in learning and practicing critical leadership behaviors for becoming an authentic, transformational servant leader. The modules also include videos that provide core knowledge essential to the learning objectives of each module. Those who successfully complete the end-of-course examination will receive a certificate of completion for documentation purposes. This self-paced, practitioner-focused course costs less than $500 per person. Each workbook can be completed in a few hours, and you can begin putting behaviors into practice immediately. You don't have to wait till the end of the course to do it. It happens right away. So the urgency to act is real. So what can you do? First, you can immediately review the last 2 webinars if you weren't there that we presented on. They're available on the HR Boost website navigation thread shown here. Second, you can take positive action, become the transformational servant leader that you desire by setting up a free consult with HR Boost or us, the Guide Star, to begin a dialogue about leadership development for you individually or for your company, and to investigate the self-guided CBC leadership program via the HR Boost website and enroll at your earliest convenience. I know it's been impossible for us to dig into all the details, but we hope you've learned more about building trust and now have some behavioral tools for doing so. We have a few minutes left, so I'd like to open the mics to get some of your immediate aha moments. And please introduce yourself by your first name and where you are physically located before you share your moment. Thanks a lot.
Wonderful, Renee. Thank you. All right. Let's open it up. I see an old friend out here. Hi, Bob. All right. Let's just open this up and have our aha moments, our takeaways, kind of reiterate them, and it can be an open conversation. If you're uncomfortable for any reason, you can just put it in chat and I'll announce it for you. But otherwise, go ahead and just unmute. Bob, you want to go first?
By the way, Bob, thanks for attending.
Yeah.
You attended more than one of these. I think you probably attended all 3, do you not?
Got to see if maybe he doesn't have his sound connected.
Hey, Cheryl, how about you?
Cheryl had to drop off. She let me know that ahead of time.
Okay.
Shelly still here.
Catherine, Bernice
had to cut off, but we've got
Shelly, you still with us?
Yeah, I'm here. I can add in something. I mean, the question I would guess is, or that comes to mind is you talked about we hire for character. In theory, I think that's amazing, but I don't know, I hear a lot of young people applying for jobs, and there's the speculation that it's built on an algorithm having keywords in their resumes and their profiles. And by the time they get to the hiring process, when they're asked certain questions, are we really hiring people based on their character when we're leading with algorithms and keywords?
Yeah, Shelly, that is an absolute key point, because this is the problem we have today. There's a churn and burn mentality. These organizations that have adopted algorithms, they're using the left brain approach rather than the right brain approach. And this is why you have a revolving door day in, day out in these larger companies. They're not keeping the people. Let's face it, the average time that an individual today, a new hire, spends in the job is less than 6 months. That's the latest statistic, okay? So what's wrong with this picture? Because let's face it, now what happens, the sooner you get them onboarded and gone, they're gone. You are wasting so much time and energy on the HR side in terms of the recruitment side. You're forgetting about the development side. And when you look at high-performing organizations, they get it right because they hire people for character and they develop for people. And I'll tell you what, none of these companies is suffering financially, the high performers we talk about, because they have the solution. They have the model. They use this approach. They use the character-based capitalism, the 4 pillars approach, and they're highly successful at it. And that's what these larger companies have failed to recognize. And another thing is, smaller companies think they have to do the same thing. No, wrong. Okay, I'll tell you what, if you're a smaller company and you take this personal approach and you really get to know them, right? They're gonna connect. Okay. And there again, Tasty Catering is a perfect example. Mike's Car Wash, which is now Crew Car Wash, talked about them last time. Okay. The majority of their employees are high schoolers and college age kids, and they stick. They stick through high school and college. Why? Because not only are they learning, okay, but they're also earning. And that's a critical difference. And that's what people want. They want to learn and earn. Right?
I just love your passion, Ray.
I'm sorry. I mean,
I love it.
I get carried away from this sometimes because, look, what really frustrates me is that there are solutions out here. There are methods. There are designs to be successful, and yet we're not using them because everyone's following the minions. Oh, by the way, let's go back to Blue Ocean strategy. How do you separate yourself from the red feeding frenzy? You separate yourself by doing something that's really unique, that is going to cause the right people to follow you, and then they're going to follow you to hell and beyond.
Right. I love it. He's disheartened just like I am, where, leaders just keep being reactive to the economic factors that are going on, and they don't take the time to do the culture look in and realize that it's going to be maybe a step backward. It takes time, care, but it's going to propel us forward. Instead, I find again and again, we even get calls, right, Ray, at HR Boost that are reactive. And yes, we come into triage, and yes, we work on it, but wouldn't it have been nicer if we could have been preventative or proactive?
I encourage everyone to go back to our last webinar when we talked about the 5 stages and really how do we get past that barrier, because most organizations right now because they are reactive, they're not thinking about how they're going to align for long-term success. Okay, so given that, we're going to ask you for your aha moments in the survey as well. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending today. We greatly appreciate your inputs. And we're sorry we ran out of time, but hopefully we had some stimulating discussion here and you've learned a lot today. We hope you have more ideas for how to improve company performance by building trust. Regardless of where you are in your leadership journey, know we are here to help you become better for your confidence and peace of mind. And so again, thank you for participating today. You'll receive a PDF version of our article, Making Capitalism Work for Everyone, via email in appreciation for your time and mental energy. Thank you in advance for completing the post-session survey, since your feedback is vitally important in helping us plan and improve future sessions. Are there any other lingering questions you'd like to address?
I think we're good, Ray.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for your presence. Make it a great day. And Ray, it was excellent. You take care and feel better.
Thank you very much, Nicole. And thank you, everyone, for attending and participating today. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.